Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ted Gardner. I'm an interviewer for the Library of Congress Oral History Program here at our great public library of Cincinnati. And our videographer and historian Super Plus is Dennis Daly. And we're interviewing today, pleasure of having known him before this, Warren Vandergriff, who served in the United States Air Force, in the 9th Air Force, in the ETO. Warren, where were you born?
Born in Winchester, Ohio.
Up the river there, yeah. Okay. And where did you start your schooling?
In Mount Calvary, which is near Winchester.
I see, okay. And then high school? What about high school?
I didn't go to high school.
Didn't go to high school?
I went 1 year.
Now, tell me about your family. Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had 3 brothers and 3 sisters.
Wow, that's a big family, I should say. And you lived over there in the beautiful southern part of Ohio.
Right.
How was it growing? Were you on a farm or were you in the town?
Raised on a farm.
What did your family raise there?
Well, my father was a tenant farmer, and he had to move every 3 years. He'd like to move. He moved several times in my life.
I see.
We lived a lot of different places,
Uh-huh.
all in Ohio.
All in Ohio. In that part of the state too, or no?
Well, we were in Clinton County, and we were in Leesburg, Sabina,
Oh, yeah.
and then back to Pike County,
I'll
where
be
he
darned.
was born.
I'll be darned. Well, that's a beautiful part of the state too. It is. Has a lot of history and a lot of tradition and so forth. There are certain times in a person's life when there are great events in history that happen, and you never forget where you were when you heard the news. And I always like to ask my friends, where were you when you heard the news about Pearl Harbor, December the 7th, 1941? Do you remember that?
Well, not exactly.
Okay.
Not precisely where I was at.
Of course, in those days, all we had was radio.
That's
exactly
right.
And no television or anything like that. You worked on the farm yourself as a boy?
Yes, I did.
And you had all those brothers and sisters to
Right.
go along with you. That's great. Right. Which one of the family are you? Number
6.
Oh, number 6. Okay. And what did your dad raise on the farm there?
Mostly hogs.
Oh, livestock. Okay. Yeah.
Corn and wheat and hogs.
So you got initiated into the real life very early, didn't you?
Yes.
How to deal with livestock and.
Right. And while we're on that subject, I was allergic to all of it.
Oh my gosh.
Pigs, horses, cows.
Oh, good grief.
Dogs.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a tough way to grow up, isn't it?
It sure is.
Oh my goodness, all the smells and everything else. Well, anyway, as a boy, did you have any interest in things? Did you have hobbies or anything like that?
I don't recall having many hobbies. We were very poor, and we didn't have toys, and you could go fishing, things like that. I suppose that would be our main hobby, and played baseball and
Right.
played ball.
Did you like to fish?
Yes, I did. At that point in time, I did.
I'll bet you're good at it. Yeah. Well, those days were so different from today, of course. Oh my golly. And, the young people today, they can't relate to what you and I grew up in that period. and the terrible depression of those days and times. It just really.
I grew up right through that.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah. When you got to say what 18, then you had to register for the draft, did you, or what was it?
Right.
Tell us about your entry into the military.
Well, prior to going into the military, I spent about 17 or 18 months in the 3 Cs.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
I told them I was 18, but I was 17, and I joined 3 Cs. I was first in Oregon for several months.
That's my home state.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where-
Vail, Oregon.
Where?
Vail,
Oh, Vail,
Vail, Oregon.
Eastern Oregon, near the Idaho line.
Right.
Yeah. What were you doing over there in Vail?
Well, mostly putting in fences and digging irrigation ditches.
Oh, I see.
Irrigating the land.
Oh, I see.
It was, if I remember right, it was very dry there.
Oh, yeah.
We built a flume from the river near Vail, and to carry water out there was a large flume. It seems you could almost stand up in it.
Wow.
I would say it's at least 5 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then they pumped the water through the flume, and then we dug the ditches and they irrigated the crops. Grew a lot of sugar beets.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Big for sugar beets.
Yeah, that's a big cash crop over there. Did you get farther west? Did you get to the ocean or anything when you were in Oregon?
No.
You didn't
No,
get
I
it.
never did. I was Portland on my way home.
Oh, you were? Mm-hmm.
But no, I never got to the beach.
Yeah, well, Portland's a beautiful city too, but, well, you know, your contribution there in the 3 Cs is something that a lot of people don't know about today, you know, Civilian Conservation Corps. And it was a way for a lot of people to be occupied, make a little money.
It put food in your mouth, and it took you off the street.
Right,
You didn't
exactly.
hang around in gangs.
Right.
And two, then after I had gone to Oregon, I came back and went to school and became a barber.
Oh, you
I went
did?
to school here in Cincinnati on 3rd Street, the old Vaughn Barber College. And after that, I owed money, so I went back into 3 Cs after working in several shops. And pretty tough when you're a kid to
Right.
get much business, especially in bigger shops where they had 8 or 10 barbers.
Oh, yeah.
They would, of course, wait for the guy that they knew
Sure.
what he was doing.
Of course.
And so then I rejoined the 3 Cs and spent another approximately, well, a little over a year. I'd say about 14 months, the second time.
And where was that?
And I was in Lancaster, Ohio for 9 months, and then the whole company moved to Nevada.
Oh,
We were about 35, 40 miles from Las Vegas.
I'll be darned.
We were right beside the Valley of Fire, if you know where that is.
Mm-hmm.
And there, again, we helped build spillways into Lake Mead.
Oh.
Lake Mead was in the process of being built when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And the dam,
Yeah.
Boulder Dam, was
Boulder Dam.
in the process of being built.
Right. Well, my goodness, those were very interesting times for you as a youngster.
I've had a very interesting life.
Well, you certainly have. I had no idea. Well, now, so then after Nevada, then you came back to Ohio?
Yes.
And then what happened?
Well, I worked in factories, several factories,
Mhm.
all crank, U.S. printing, and the main one, I can't think of, they built furniture there in Norwood. And in fact, we lived in Norwood 41 years. I
Oh, you
lived there.
did, yes.
And I worked, Globe Wernicke. I couldn't think of the name.
Oh, Globe Wernicke, yeah.
Old Globe Wernicke.
Yeah, they were,
After that, then when I went in the service and came back, they had held my job, and
sure.
I went back to Globe Wernicke and worked, and I wasn't happy. We were either on strike or they'd locked us out all the time, and a little much to put up with, so I took exam and became a mail carrier.
I see.
And I carried mail for a year and a half, and I wasn't totally happy with that.
Not surprised.
I didn't like slogging through the rain carrying a
Right.
pack on your back. So I'd see police cruisers pass, and they looked comfortable, always inside, not getting wet. So I took an exam and became a police officer.
Oh, yes. Norwood Police or?
Norwood Police.
I'll be
Right.
darned. Well,
And after 29 years on the police department, I retired. I worked my way up. I became a lieutenant.
good for you.
And,
That's wonderful.
And I was a relief commander in the city of Norwood.
Well, I'll be darned. Now, when did you enter the service?
September 30th, 1943.
Okay. And that was the Army?
Army Air Force.
Army Air Force.
Right.
And where'd they send you?
Where'd they take me? Well, first we went to Fort Knox.
Okay.
Well, Fort Thomas, then
Yeah.
Fort Knox,
Yeah.
then Atlantic City, and we were there for 5 or 6 weeks, and then they test you to see what you were good at, and they decided I would make a good radio operator. So they sent me to Chicago, and we lived in the Stevens Hotel in Chicago, which is a very large hotel.
Oh, boy, I'll say. I remember that. Yeah.
And we had the complete hotel, and we went to school then, and 6 months later, you had to build a radio that worked, would receive and send code, and you had to, pass the grade with.
You had to learn the Morse code.
Right. Yes,
Yeah.
you did. Yes.
Oh, yeah. How about that?
So after that, when we graduated, then they sent us to Fort Myers, Florida, for gunnery training, and we went there and was there for, I'd say, another 5 or 6 weeks. I don't remember exactly, but it had to be over a month, and I'd say about 6 weeks. And then after that, after you'd flown and fired at the socks they pulled on the planes, they sent me to Avon Park, Florida, where I joined my crew. And then you flew missions. They weren't really, it was to get you acquainted with each other.
What type of plane were you in?
Sure.
What kind of plane? were you-
B-26,
Oh, the 26, the Marauder.
Marauder.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
We lost by far more men in training than we lost in combat. We lost, I don't remember, of course, how many, but sometime we'd lose 15, 16 men, and just the planes would collide. Quite often they would, one would take off and the other was supposed to fly his wing, and they flew right into each other. And
Oh, goodness.
16 men lost.
I know it. How large a crew did a 26?
6.
6 in the crew?
On a normal plane. Now, the lead planes had 7 or 8.
Oh, really?
They'd have a radio operator on the radio, and they'd have a bombardier, and they'd have a navigator. But in our plane, never flew a lead ship. We flew on the wing of
Wing.
other planes, and we always had 6 men. Pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, navigator, radio gunner, engineer, gunner, and tail gunner.
Ah, I see. Well, now in your training as a radio operator and learning gunnery, where was your place on the plane?
Well, as a radio man, it's right behind the pilot
Okay.
in a B-26, directly behind the pilot. And of course, your radio gunners were assigned to waist guns, and you had one gun out each window and the tail. And my pilot always said he didn't want me there, he wanted me in the top turret. And the pilot he was in charge, and he put the engineer on the waist guns. Reason being, the engineer had to arm the bombs before they could be dropped. He had to, if the gas had to be transferred from one tank to another, it was his job to do that. If he pulled the pins on the bombs and armed them, and for some reason or other you couldn't drop your bombs, he had to put the pins back in. Yeah. And he was the only one on the plane that was trained to do that.
Right.
So it made what the pilot said made a lot of sense. He said, yeah, he wanted me in the top turret. Pat Fitzgerald, our engineer, he wanted him on the waist gun because it was easier for him, you know. Made it better for everybody.
Now, how did you get over to Europe?
On the Aquitania. We went over by ship.
Oh, big old liner, yeah. Well, that must have been an interesting experience.
Well, it was all right, but it's a British ship, and they had, the food on it was 90% mutton. And
Oh
I
my
never was much of a mutton man. But
not a very well balanced diet.
But I learned a long time ago, you eat what's put before you.
Yeah.
Don't bellyache.
Yeah, right. And clean your plate.
Sir?
And clean your plate.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's exactly.
That was all. I'll never forget that. Remember the starving Armenians and all those things that we used to hear about. Well, now going across, do you remember how long it took you to go across the ocean?
No, I don't exactly.
Did you go on a zigzag course?
Yes.
Did you have an escort of Navy ships or anything?
No.
All by yourself?
No, we didn't.
Wow.
We zigzagged our way completely across. It sticks in my mind. It was like between 8 and 10 days.
Yeah.
But
That makes sense.
I don't know.
You never saw any U-boats or anything like that?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, let's see. So that would have been what, 1944?
Late 43.
Late
Oh, I told you I went in there in 43. It was 42.
I wondered about that, yeah.
Yeah. I was inducted September the 30th, 1942.
Okay, all right. So then when you went across, that was a year later?
Yes, sir.
I see.
A little bit more than a year later.
Yeah.
Well, it was the latter part of September.
Okay.
Or early October.
Okay. Yeah.
When we went over.
And you went ashore in England, did you?
Went ashore in Scotland.
Scotland, okay.
And we didn't stay there long in Scotland.
No.
And we went to Ireland, about 28 miles from Belfast.
Okay.
And they gave us advanced training, combat training. And they did a lot of flying. On the downside was that the captain there, the colonel's assistant, found out I was a barber, and they pulled me off my plane and put me in a barber shop. And they had taken over there was a pig farm to make an air base there, And where the barbershop they put me in had been a birthing room for pigs.
Gosh.
When it rained, it smelled just like pigs.
Oh my gosh.
And me being allergic to pigs, they were there again between 5 and 6 weeks, and I was frantic. I
bet.
tried to tell them that I
Yeah.
was allergic to animals and couldn't be in that position. And besides, with all the training I'd had, I certainly didn't want to go. I was a barber before I ever went to service.
Well, of
It
course.
didn't make sense to me. But after a lot of animosity and problems between us, they finally decided to put me back on my plane. And when my crew was ready to
good.
leave, they put me back with my crew.
Well, now, how did you? I mean, you're coming off a farm in southern Ohio. You've already had some experience, you know, but all of a sudden now you're in a medium bomber and a powerful plane, and you're going to go against the enemy. How did you? What was your feeling about all of that?
I was raised that you just do the best you can do with what you have to do with,
Wherever you are.
wherever you're at. Any whatever
Sure.
happens.
That's right.
And if you're going to get killed, you're going to get killed.
Yep.
And my mother always taught me that a coward dies 1,000 deaths, and a brave person dies once.
Yep.
And I was raised that way,
Right.
and I still practice that today.
Absolutely. I know what you mean. Well, that you found yourself in the British Isles. Did you fly out of Northern Ireland, or did you move to another base?
We moved to England and started flying combat missions from England.
I see. Okay. Okay.
And,
Did you have any contact with the English people?
oh, quite a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. They were very nice and very appreciative.
Very much so.
And they, I didn't have a lot of contact, but had every contact I ever had was good.
Right.
They appreciated you.
Well, I know, and that meant a lot in those days. Being in England and with, of course, it was nice that they spoke the same language that we do.
I told this gentleman that on the way in, I believe, that at least we were there where we spoke.
You had a common language, yeah, right.
Exactly.
Well, where in England was your base?
Well, it was at Chipping Ongar, and that is about 20 miles from Chelmsford, if you know where Chelmsford is. But our air base mailing address was Chipping Ongar.
I see.
And there's another town near there, but I can't think of the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
But prior to D-Day, we flew several missions from Chipping Ongar. And prior to D-Day, I'd say about a month or 6 weeks prior, we moved down near Southampton and Bournemouth, down in that area.
Right.
We flew our missions over the White Cliffs of Dover.
How about that?
Going and coming, you could always see the White Cliffs of Dover.
Isn't that
Flew
something?
directly
Yeah.
over them.
Well, now what was your first mission? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Well, they were all pretty much the same, were they? I mean, you flew over France and Germany and now, what was the primary mission of the B-26?
Well, mostly we would bomb air bases,
Mm-hmm.
bridges, railroad marshalling yards,
Right.
submarine pens.
Wow.
That was our toughest mission, trying to bomb the submarine pens
Oh, yeah.
in Holland. They were so well protected.
Right.
In fact, the first mission ever flown to try to bomb the submarine pens, don't hold me to it exactly, but it seems there was 18 planes went. And this was prior to my getting there.
Mm-hmm.
They sent 18 planes, and 5 of them came back for one reason or other. Had engine malfunction or whatever. The other 13 that went in to bomb, none of them was ever heard of from again.
Oh my goodness.
No one came back.
Oh my God.
That they said we were going to be low level bombing, and you'd go in right on the deck. But after that happened, that changed.
Moved them up.
And we went up.
Yeah.
We went up. We flew any place from 8,500 up to 15,000.
15,000. That's pretty high. How much of a load did a B-26? How much of a load carry?
They could handle a 4,000-pound bomb, or they can handle 28 100-pound bombs, or you would have 8 1,000-pound bombs, and I'd say 4,000 pounds probably pretty well catch it.
Well, that's a pretty good load. Pretty effective.
Of explosive.
Yeah, I should say so. Now, what was the number of your squadron?
A 557th Squadron.
557th Bomb Group?
No, the group was 387th Group.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You see, you have 4 squadrons make up a group.
Ah, okay.
We had the 556th, 57th, 58th, and 59th. 559th. And the group was 387th.
Well, I'm sure that you were very, very effective, and you had a very, in a way, a desperate mission, particularly talking about the submarine pens, as you're saying. They were so heavily guarded, weren't they, by the Germans?
While we're back on that subject, after we had been there, and they've told the story numerous times, we got there, I'd say 5 or 6 months after this happened. And so we knew all about it, knew where it was, knew it on the map. And one day a gentleman came through an officer came through the barracks, and he said, I need a radio gunner and a tail gunner. And he said, I'm a co-pilot, and I've flown my 25 missions. I'm getting to go home, but I just want to fly one mission as a pilot. And he said, could you help me out? And I said, yeah, I'd be willing to go with you. I knew him from seeing him around, didn't know him well. Big man, big blonde-haired guy. Anyway, I said to my tail gunner, I said, Tom, how about let's go with him? And he wants to fly a mission as a pilot. He said, sure, I'll go. He said, yeah. So Tom and I volunteered to go with him, and he did a beautiful job. He was a wonderful pilot.
Where was he from?
I have no idea. Well, I believe New York.
Oh, okay.
I think New York, but I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah.
But when we went in the briefing room, they have it up on the map, and it's behind the curtain. And when they opened the curtain, guess where we're going? To Holland, to bomb those same submarine pens.
Oh my goodness. You'd been there before.
We like to die.
Oh, gee.
But you couldn't back out.
Oh,
There's no
of
way.
course not.
There's no way you could back out. So we flew the mission, and they shot us up pretty good. But when the minute he dropped his bombs, this pilot turned the plane and dove, and till we almost all blacked out. And when he pulled out, we were right in the treetop, just above the treetops. We come across that channel back to England,
Oh my gosh.
redlining that plane. He was just going as fast as he could get it to go
Oh,
because he was scared to death too.
sure.
And you can imagine, here he had his missions in. They were
Yep.
he was getting to come home
But he wanted to fly
at that
one
point in
more
time.
as a pilot. How about that?
I'm sorry?
I say he wanted to fly one more
Yeah,
as a
As a
pilot
pilot.
rather
right.
than just a co-pilot.
Almost got us all in trouble.
Oh my God. Now, did you get a medal for flying? Did
Well,
you get air medal or anything?
Air medals, I got 10 air medals.
Oh, you did? Wow.
Well, you see, you get a air medal with an oak leaf cluster, and I have an air medal with 9 oak leaf clusters.
My goodness sakes. Well, that's outstanding. That's
Thank you.
outstanding. Where were you on the 6th of June, 1944?
We were stationed at near Bournemouth and Southampton, down in, I guess that's the southern part of England.
Yeah, it's right at the bottom of the big island, yeah.
And we were supposed to fly 3 missions that day, but we were only able to fly 2 due to bad weather.
Right.
The weather was horrendous. When we took off from the runway, the pilot had to fly and climb maybe 100 feet per minute until he broke through the clouds. But the clouds was 8,000 and 10,000 feet high.
Wow.
And you couldn't even see the ends of your wingtips of your plane. You couldn't see that far in these clouds, and it was bad. It was bad. Worked on your nerves.
Oh, yeah.
Needless to say,
Yeah.
everybody on the plane strained and watched and looked to make sure we didn't
Sure.
collide with somebody. But to my knowledge, we never lost many planes, if any, that day, due to bad weather.
Well, and of course, the D-Day actually was delayed because of the weather.
Right.
I remember reading about it. Eisenhower, wanted to go on the 4th or something like that. Couldn't do it. Now, so did you go right over the Normandy beaches?
Right over the top of the biggest armada that was ever assembled
What a thrill.
on the face of the earth.
Wow.
And we went over them, well, actually 4 times, in and out, went in and out twice that day.
Isn't that something? Did your plane get hit or anything like that?
We had several holes.
No
yes.
kidding.
Some of it was light ammunition, rifles. But flying in, we flew in very low, and mostly our object that hit was troops. We carried 28 100-pound bombs, and they would set them so that you drop one every 2 or 3 seconds or 5 seconds. I don't know the settings, what they had, but you could set them so one bomb would drop every 5 seconds or every 2 seconds.
Now, as a radio operator gunner, were you able to observe outside the plane what was going on and so forth?
Well, see, when you was in enemy territory, I was always in the top turret or side gun. Some
Right.
missions I flew, all depending on who I was flying with. Some missions I flew waist guns. You could see a lot from the waist gun. You could see a lot from the top turret.
Oh, I would think so.
Yeah.
I think you'd feel pretty exposed up there.
Yeah, you're sitting right up
Wow. Goodness sakes. Did you see enemy planes coming toward you or anything
there. There
like
was
that?
very few, if any,
Yeah.
enemy planes that
Yeah.
day on D-Day.
Yeah.
There were other days I have, but not D-Day.
Not D-Day.
D-Day, we pretty well took over the skies.
Yeah. And I think, isn't it true that the Germans at that time were holding back what they had left of their Air Force to protect Berlin and so forth? Yeah.
Exactly.
That's just, that's so exciting, Warren, to hear you describe how you felt and everything. As a radio gunner, you would give information to the pilot?
Yes, you were on intercom and you could talk back and forth.
I see.
And we did.
Inside the plane like that, in combat, I never had that experience, but what was the atmosphere among the crew like?
Well, you talked quite a lot, but for the most part, you were looking and watching. And
Concentrating on what
exactly, and we didn't wear it out the talking to each other. However, we did have a bombardier navigator. His name was Owen McLaughlin, and Owen was he loved poetry, and he knew more poetry than anybody I've ever known in my life. In fact, I talked to him. He and I are the only two left that was on my plane.
Is that right?
Right, and he lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I talked to him about a week or so ago.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
He's your age, is he?
Reciting poetry. He's older than me. He's 90 and I'm 89.
Right, right. Well, isn't that something? That you're the last two guys?
Last two. No
wow. Well, I hope you can get together.
Well, I wouldn't count on that. But
well, did he recite poetry?
he did. He recited poetry all the time.
No kidding.
Even when you're getting shot at, sometimes you'd have to say, "Shut up, Owen."
Oh, that's funny.
He's a character.
Oh.
He stayed in the service and retired as a major.
Oh.
Yeah, he stayed in. He flew in B-52s and all kinds of
Big
planes.
guys,
Yeah.
big guys, yeah.
But he made it a career.
Probably got his 20 years in, huh?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, yeah.
Seems that he got a little over 20 years.
Now, D-Day and your targets were the gun emplacements, were they? And troops?
And troops. Mostly troops.
I see.
Yeah, mostly troops.
Yeah, yeah.
They let the heavy bombers aim at the gun emplacements.
I see.
Mostly ours was troops.
But could you see our troops going in?
Oh, sure. Yes, you could.
Wow.
But the thing you seemed to watch more than anything was the battleships when they would fire.
Right.
They would fire all salvo, and it looked like the ship was going to capsize.
Yeah.
It would rock and rock.
Oh, yeah.
And then, as soon as it would stabilize, they'd fire another
Fire
one.
it again and
Then back she'd go again.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, but you could see the troop. We were only about 250, 300 feet at the most.
Oh, boy.
We're right down on the deck.
Oh, you sure were.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
That's
that,
the reason we picked up small arm fire.
yeah.
They fired at us with their rifles, some of the troop did. But I imagine for the most part they were looking for cover.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine so. Now, of course, our planes were well armored, weren't they? I mean, they had pretty good protection as far as, no?
The only thing they gave you is a piece of flax suit
Yeah,
to hang over your shoulders and down your back and chest. But far as armament in those planes being armed, they were just metal. That's all.
that's all they were, yeah.
No protection at all.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'm just, we're in wonder and awe of you and what you did. How many missions did you fly?
51.
51. Wow, my golly. You were only supposed to fly 25, weren't you?
Well, when we got there, it was 25. But when I got about 17 or 18 in, they raised it to 30. And then when I got 24, 25 in, they raised it to 35. And then when I got 32, something like that, they made it 50. And then when I got up near 50, they said, we're winning the war and no one's going home. I don't care how many Masons you've got. And so, and maybe that was good because some of the fellows that came home, they come back and got killed within the first or two or three missions they flew afterwards.
Goodness.
And they were killed, so I don't know, maybe you lose your sharpness.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seemed that more men that got to come home for a month, it was 30-day furlough is what it was. We lost more of them than anybody else.
Isn't that something? Yeah. Yeah, that's an odd aspect, isn't it, to think about that. Their luck had run out.
Sir?
Their luck had run out.
I don't know. I always thought it was they let their guard down.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Didn't keep sharp and
Right.
keep
They're
tough.
not sharp.
Yeah.
You lose it after you're, I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Well, it is hard to explain.
But you couldn't miss it.
Yeah, the psychology of something like that. I'm sure somebody's written about an answer for that. Well, now, as the war progressed and the Allies moved in through France, you kept going with them, did you?
We moved to France, I would say 12, 14 days after D-Day. We moved to Cherbourg, which is right on the coast. When we take off and land, we would take off. The runway ended at the cliffs, at Cherbourg Cliffs, where you fly over them. And if your plane lost power, you wound up in the English Channel.
Wow.
But we didn't lose many planes like that. It was kind of scary. That mat, they just laid down metal mats. They were huge metal mats, and that plane just sounded horrible when it was running over that.
Oh, I'm sure, because the mats had the great big holes in them, didn't it?
Well, they were like pins.
Interlocking.
Interlocking.
Yeah.
Right.
And rattle and rattle. Oh my gosh.
It was no wonder I lost my hearing. That and machine guns.
Yeah.
And nearly all of us lost our hearing.
Isn't that something? Did you get anything for your disablement?
Yes, I'm 100% disabled.
You are. I'll be
But
darned.
that doesn't relate to that. It relates to being put in there in the pigsty, barbering. I picked up a condition called lichen planus, and it later on in life became cancer.
Goodness sakes.
And they gave me, in 2007, they gave me 100% disability.
For heaven's sake. Isn't that something? Well, that is very, to me, that's very odd, for a combat soldier to have something like that. My goodness. I know on shipboard where I was, we had several people that were just seasick 24/7.
Oh, that must be horrible.
Terrible. And the Navy, well, we don't want to get into it, but the Navy always was suspicious of somebody like that.
Oh, sure.
He's a malingerer or something, he wants to get ashore and so forth. Now, as you moved on in through France from Cherbourg, what were your eventual targets? Certain cities in France and then Germany, or how did that?
Well, it was bridges and there again, the
Yeah.
same thing, marshaling yards,
Yep.
railroad bridges, all types of bridges and marshaling yards and
Rail lines,
yeah, or it might be troops, sometimes it was
Roads.
troops.
roads with troops on it.
Gun emplacements,
Goodness sakes.
they always had targets. Never ran out of targets.
Oh, I'm sure not. Did you notice the enemy never lost, I mean, I don't know quite how to explain it, but as the enemy had to pull back because of your onslaught, and then toward the end of the war, the Germans were using more old men and young people on the
what
ground too.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we moved from Cherbourg, we moved to different locations. I have it in some of the articles I brought with me. We kept following the troops. And when they had the Battle of the Bulge, if they hadn't stopped the Germans, we were only about 6 miles from the Battle of Bulge. And we had already put dynamite in everything. We couldn't take it with us. And we
No.
were going to just get in the plane and take whatever personal belongings you could
Yeah.
bring with you, and we were going to take off. Because if they overrun the airfield, and they were within just a few miles. I said 6 miles, but it could be more or less. But they weren't far from us.
And that, of course, December of '44 was a terrible winter.
It was a really bad one.
And of course, we know about the Battle of the Bulge, and the Air Force couldn't fly because of the terrible winter. And the Germans were really making a tremendous battle for it, weren't they? Up against that.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, things started to clear, and then our Air Force could go in.
Yeah, you need the Air Force. You also need the troops, ground troops.
Oh,
if you
yes.
didn't have them, you couldn't take anything.
Sure.
You need each other.
Well, now, what was it like when they were holding you on ground because of the weather?
Well, you just found something to do to occupy your time.
Yeah.
I remember when we were in France, after we moved to France, we used to have guards, and somebody came up with the idea that probably the planes would be safer if they put the crews guard them. So I did some guard duty, on your plane. They would have 2 planes on each hard stand. They would have them set up so you could guard 2 planes at one time. And we did that. And I remember one time when we were doing guard duty, a German plane come over, and apparently he had been from that base that we had taken over, because it was so dark, I don't see how he could see anything. And he shot the place up pretty good. And in fact, the fellow with me, his name was Davidson, he was about 6'5", and we dived under an overhang of rock, and I got all the way under. He dived in, but he didn't crawl back under the rock. He had his legs sticking out, and this German plane put a bullet right between his legs. Didn't hurt him, didn't touch him. But the bullet went in the ground right between his legs. And I said to him, "Why didn't you pull your legs in?" He said, "All I worried about was my upper torso.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the legs."
Boy, he was lucky. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
he was very lucky.
Yeah.
I believe he's from Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
Very nice man.
Did you get wounded yourself?
No, I never was wounded.
Very lucky, very lucky.
No.
My goodness, I should say. What? Well, after you started, we started moving the Germans back toward Berlin. Did you get into Berlin or get that far over?
No, I never did. No. In fact, I left there around Christmas time in 44.
Oh, you did?
They sent me to, my condition got so bad from this lichen planus. Of course, they didn't know what it was. They didn't do a biopsy, and they didn't have a clue what I had.
Well, what were the symptoms?
Well, you weep. Your skin breaks out and weeps.
Really?
And you can look it up on internet.
Yeah.
But it wept, and my clothing would stick to it.
My gosh.
So
That sounds like a terrible condition.
it was a bad scene, and especially when they didn't know what they were treating. When I came home, I went to a doctor here in Cincinnati. I can't think of his name right this minute, but he said, I never like to treat anything till I know what I'm treating. And he did a biopsy, and he told me immediately, he said, you have lichen planus. He said, sooner or later, it'll probably cause you trouble. He said it becomes cancer after a period of time. And he was right. I've had cancer now since 2002.
Well, is this something like a skin cancer?
Well, it starts out on your skin, but it
Oh.
wound up in my mouth.
Well, for heaven's sake.
I lost all these teeth.
Uh-huh. Well, Warren, that's my goodness. That was just terrible. Who in the world would have thought anything like that would happen? So when you were finally pulled out of there in late December of 44, that's when did they bring you back to the States?
Well, they sent me to England, and I was in England for probably 2 months in a hospital. And then they put me on a Red Cross ship and sent me back to the States. And I landed in Boston on April 10th, 1945.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, they sent me to Chicago. I was in the Vaughan General Hospital for several months, and then they sent me back to Fort Thomas Hospital, and I was there until I was discharged September the 20th. Well, I say 23rd, they say 22nd. Reason being, they mistyped my serial number in my discharge papers, and I caught it right away and showed it to them, and they said, well, come back tomorrow and we'll try to get that straightened out. I was really discharged that day, I suppose. I came home, went back the next day, and they said, no, if you want that corrected, you're going to have to stay in another 2 weeks.
Oh.
I'd already told them I'd be back to work. So I said, I took it and I corrected it myself.
Yeah. He who helps himself.
Yeah, that's right.
You betcha.
And it never caused me any trouble.
No. Did you ever have any feelings about staying in the Air Force after the war?
You know, after I was discharged and went back to Globe Warnicki to work, we worked about 5 weeks and went on strike. And we were on strike for 6 weeks. And then when we decided we didn't want to strike anymore, we were going to go back to work, the company wouldn't let us in. For 7 more weeks, they locked us out. 13 weeks I was off.
Oh my goodness.
So and you know, when we were discharged, you could draw $20 a week for 52 weeks, I believe. Don't hold me to that, but I think it was for a year. And so I thought, well, I'll go down and draw that. Not after you went back to work. You couldn't draw a cent.
Oh my gosh.
When I went to apply for it, they said, no, you went back to work, so that cancels that out.
Oh my golly.
So that's what got me on the ball, though, and caused me to want a different job
Sure.
and go in the post office.
And then, of course, then you had another union there, postal union.
Oh, yes. Well, You don't strike in the post office. They don't go on strike there.
No.
Or they never, didn't when I was there, let's put it that way.
5 minutes, okay. Well, now, does any particular story or incident aboard a plane or on D-Day or anything that you recall, anything of humor, for example, or anything particular?
Not really. There's not too much humor there.
No, there's not too much humor. Any
We had things happen that were funny. And
scary experiences?
we had things happen that, I recall one thing happened. It wasn't necessarily D-Day. This plane was taking off and he lost power. Why, I don't know. But he said to his engineer, fire a flare so the other plane won't be following me and run into me. We're going to have to abort takeoff. So the engineer, in his excitement, stuck the flare gun up, and you had to put it in a bracket and fire outside the plane. Well, he pulled the trigger before he got it into the hole, and the projectile went down the pilot's neck.
Oh my God.
Went down inside of his flight suit. He lost control of the plane and ran into a hangar. And when he went in this direction and took out the left engine on the hangar, he jumped out and ran, and it was wild. He probably wouldn't have lived anyway. He was burned so badly. And he ran into the other prop. It was still spinning, and it cut his head off.
Oh my God.
It was a horrible thing.
Oh, so terrible.
But we were behind him. We saw it, but we had to go in and take off.
Sure.
We couldn't.
Oh my goodness sakes, yeah. Well, so then where were you back in the States when the war ended?
Yes, I was.
Okay, okay.
In fact, I was home on a few days furlough. I don't know, 5-day furlough or something. I was at my brother's home, and when they announced the war was over.
How did your family feel about your being gone?
Well, they missed me.
They missed you, sure.
See, I was married and had a 3-year-old child when I got back. She was 3 months old when I left, and 3 years and 3 months
Oh,
when I
for
got back.
goodness sakes.
My oldest daughter.
Yeah.
And they miss me, of course, like everybody else does, but
Yeah.
life goes on.
Now, how about your wife?
We're still together 68 years.
Isn't that amazing?
Flag Day of June the 14th, we were married 68 years.
68 years. Well, God bless you. That's just a wonderful, wonderful story. Do you have any other thoughts or any feelings you want to express?
Well, I'm not much on starting wars. I always thought that if the people that start the wars would be the first one in combat, we wouldn't have very many wars.
You're right.
That goes through my mind a lot.
Yeah. And that's always the way it's been in history, though, you know it?
Right.
As long as man exists, I'm afraid it's going to be like that. You had some reunions, did you, your outfit?
Oh, I went to several.
Yes.
We went all over the country a few years ago,
Right.
but now we can't make it anymore.
Can't do that
And
anymore.
they've more or less stopped having them.
Right, right. Are there quite a number left out of the bomb group?
No, there isn't many.
Yeah.
I don't know how many, but
Yeah.
I would imagine out of the whole group, I don't know. I would imagine there's less than 200
Right, right, yeah.
out of the whole group.
Yeah, we're certainly a dwindling crowd, that's for sure. Well, Warren, this has been a wonderful story that you
Well,
have
thank you.
told us.
Thank you.
And we're so proud of you, and we thank you. And I know that your family is going to love having the DVD and seeing you talk and tell your story. And you've done it so well, and you have a wonderful memory too.
Well, thank you.
That's always helped through your life, hasn't it?
It's helped me a lot.
I should
Trust
say
me.
so. And all the great things that you've done, you know, growing up as a farm boy and being a barber and being in the CCC and then a policeman. How long were you a policeman?
29 years.
20
A little over 29.
29 years. Well, we certainly, our community thanks you for what you've done,
Well, thank you.
and God bless you, and I want
Thank
you
you.
to know how much we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.